Richard, just tell us a little bit more about this of your talk today. You're one of the first on the stage.
Yeah. Well, firstly, it was great. Really packed auditorium. A really good feel about it as well. Really good energy. So I was talking about the role of national highways. So we operate, maintain, improve the street road network. So that's the motorways, near roads. I was sort of setting out the importance of it. I'm going to say politics about how we plan for the network and the direction of the new government, and also the sort of things we do. So major enhancements, supporting lorry parking, and then thinking about the future. And I think one of the key messages was that we want to work with industry. It's really important that we work collaboratively and in partnership. And actually, it's really important that the sector feels like it's engaged and helping us frame what the future of the SRN is, to deliver for them, but deliver for our customers and our communities and industry and housing and all those lovely things.
So let's talk about some of those challenges, because you're talking about so many different strands, but with that comes so many different challenges. What are some of those key things you're having to deal with and also deliver?
Well, I think there's a few things. I think there's growth in the network. So we've got a growing network, growing demand in the network, which means that there's how do you manage that demand? How do you think about these technology? How do you think about big improvements like A428 Black Caxton Gibbet, £1 billion scheme, improving the A428, significant investment. How do you think about the fiscal challenges in terms of government, the government priorities? How do we make the case for roads? One of my big points in there was about how do we make the case for roads? We need to make sure government hear that loud voice from industry about why we need to invest in roads. And the other point I think was quite important was about just thinking and remembering that we do have an aging asset. So the asset was a lot of asset was built in the 60s and 70s. It's getting old. It needs a lot of maintenance. And seeing to the sector that we're going to have to invest more in operating and renewing the asset, which does affect our customers, does affect this industry in terms of more roadworks, more delays, more planned sort of activity on our network, and just talking around those sort of pressures. But fundamentally, I think there's an opportunity as well. Government are thinking about its missions. They're thinking about housing growth. They're thinking about economic growth. And this industry, this sector is pivotal to that. You can't build houses without trucks delivering things. You can't support electric vehicle manufacturer in Bridgeworth without having trucks to deliver things. So I think it's about that systems approach. But yeah, great opportunities, I think. But I think the industry needs a really strong voice, and a really strong voice about what it can do and how it can support government's agenda.
So how important is this event, this microlise event, in terms of bringing all those different people together?
Yeah, I think it's really important. Twofold. I think it's important that they have access to and hear from colleagues like myself and National Highways about what we do. I think it's important that you bring colleagues together to think about the challenges they have and to learn from each other. I think it's important about showing innovation and how we can think differently about some of the problems we have. So I think these forums are useful. I think everyone had a good night last night as well. I wasn't here, but it sounds like they had a good night last night as well. So there we go. But I think fundamentally it's about learning from each other, thought leadership, and I want to say being aspirational for the sector. I think that's important.
And what about sort of technologies? Because you talked here about making sure you've got things in terms of like purely places where people can actually plug in sort of for electricity. But there's so many. Yeah.
I mean, I think they often talk about a technology revolution, whether it be autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles. I think there is a real opportunity for technology to allow the sector to optimise its performance, to deal with some of those challenges it has in terms of driver shortages or better information. I think there's lots of opportunities which allow the sector to perform better, but there are opportunities in terms of technology which allow the sector to think about decarbonisation, think about how they're more efficient. And I think the challenge with technology is about how we get it to the masses. And I think that's one of the things. It always feels like it's the cusp. And do you remember your first phone? Mine was a Nokia 3310, by the way. Right? I've got an iPhone now, but it's a bit like that. How do we get to that really functional system? And it's not just for the operators, it's for everyone in the sector. So it's everyone from the road operator ourselves, to government legislation, to people in this conference as well. And it's about systems thinking.
And what about the world is a bit of a crazy place at the moment, with talk of tariffs one day from with Donald Trump, the next minute they're in, they're out, they're off, they're going. What sort of impact does what is going on in the rest of the world have on the transport industry here?
So we could have an impact in terms of, especially in terms of import and exports. I think that's well understood, and we know from Brexit, about the ports and how we manage traffic into and out of the country, and the importance of doing that in a very controlled and managed way. If I knew what Donald Trump was going to do with tariffs, I wouldn't be sitting here. I'd be sitting somewhere else, very rich and wealthy. But you are right. We do need to think about those external factors which do affect the industry. And sometimes those things are just not known. They're sort of variable. But do we not always plan for uncertainty? I think this industry plans for uncertainty quite well. This industry is good at uncertainty, and I think tariffs are in that sort of space as well.
And what about sort of collaboration between your industry and people working locally? Because sometimes you're talking huge companies here, but also you've got individuals as well.
So we do quite a few initiatives. So I started many years ago something called Driving for Better Business. And Van Excellence, a guy called Mark Cartwright, you may know him, used to work at FDA. And that is all around working with that small supplier, working with the guy with 2 vans. And it's about trying to give them tools and information which allows them to understand legislation, best practice, the benefits of sensors on vehicles to reduce collisions and insurance, how he optimizes. And it's basically trying to help those people who don't have access to everything. So that's an example of a free service. That's about industry and about supporting those smaller operators.
Looking ahead, what are the long-term priorities for National Highways?
So I would say the long-term priorities are around how we use technology, how we optimise the network, and I think one of the things we do and must do is to make sure the network we've got is resilient to climate change, it's well maintained, is available, that we provide really good information to our customers about the network availability, and that we continuously improve the network. Safety. I was saying to the conference, 10% of all delays cause of safety. So people having little bumps, people having accidents. Now imagine you got that down to 5%. It's a massive journey time benefit for everyone. So doing the basics, thinking about the future, thinking about the network we've got, and making the case again and again about the role the SRM plays in supporting those government outcomes, but with industry. And I think that's really important.
Well, Richard, thank you very much. Just before I let you go, firstly, you've obviously been on the stage, but just say what else are you looking forward to here?
I've had a look at the electric trucks, as all people do. I just want to see the size of the battery. That's because I've got an EV car, so just like trying to have a little look at that. Interested as well in recognition, a few of the other things, but I've already had a wander around. Lots of toys. Big boy toys, can I say that?
Oh, you can. You can. Well, enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank
you once again.
Thank you.